What is up, everybody? This is your guy Cly, and welcome back to Budget Buys. And today we're going to be taking a look at the Bugha LED gaming keyboard from Five Below, as well as the rest of the collection, though I'm going to be splitting those off into their own videos because I've actually got a good bit to say about each and every one of these. But don't worry, I'm not going to be uploading them once a week like I usually do. Instead, I'm going to be sacrificing just a little bit of my sanity in order to bring them to you as fast as humanly possible. So subscribe if you want to know when the particular review you're looking for goes live. With all of that out of the way, let's take a look at this $10 gaming keyboard. And for bonus points, I'm going to do some side-by-side comparisons with the previous gaming keyboard Five Below came out with. Okay, I know there was one in between these two models, but I don't have that one, and I'm not exactly certain that one was specifically put together for Five Below. Now, the back of the box does mention a few of the features that you have to look forward to with this keyboard, including an RGB LED light, which was so nice they included it twice, laser cut keys, WASD gaming keys, function hotkeys, anti-ghosting, a USB connector, ergonomic design, function indicator, and a numpad. However, this failed to go into detail when it comes to a few of the features that I think are real selling points. And for those of you who are curious about the ghosting, of which this keyboard is anti, it's basically when your keyboard fails to register keys while you're holding 6 or more of them down simultaneously. And I can definitely see how that would be important while gaming. Now, I did notice when taking this out of the box that the Bugha collector card included with it is not the first one in the series. Maybe I should do them in order, but probably not, because the view counts on my previous Five Below gaming gear videos are telling me that people are most curious about the keyboard. And something tells me the first thing on all of their minds is going to be, is this a mechanical keyboard? No, it's not. This is a membrane keyboard. You're not very likely to get your hands on a mechanical keyboard for around $10 firsthand. Now, I do have a few mechanicals that I've paid way less than that for, but that's because of good luck while thrifting. Instead, what we have here is a membrane keyboard, which is easy to notice based on the sound. Or lack thereof. If it was a mechanical keyboard, it would sound a little something like this. Of course, I do know that there are silent, non-clicky mechanical keys out there, so let's zoom in and prove this. And while I've got this zoomed in, I just want to say it's kind of neat that they put WASD on the arrow keys of all things. But without further ado, let's go ahead and bring in the key puller, give a yank, and there you have it. That is a rubber dome. And I want to correct one thing about my previous keyboard review. I said that I didn't like the feel of the keyboard because it had rubber domes and they kind of fell with a thud. I thought that was due to the fact that they used a bit of a more robust membrane, but it turns out that it was actually due to the travel of the keys. Here I have the up key I just pulled off, and here I have the up key from the previous keyboard I reviewed. Now, if we look at them in profile, the first thing we can see is that the one from this keyboard is actually a little bit taller, both on the cap and on the base. And if we just line them up based on the tops, it has a significant amount of additional travel. And that's where my problem came in. The other keyboard pretty much hits bottom the moment you touch the key. And that just feels wrong to me. One more thing I want to address while we have a key off the keyboard is the laser cut keys. Basically, what that means is they were able to take a clear keycap, coat it in black paint, and then use a laser to carve the designs into the top of the key. And this allows the LEDs inside of the keyboard to shine through. They didn't do that on the previous keyboard, and to be perfectly honest, I think that's a nice touch. Now, while I still have everything zoomed in, I just want to take a moment to appreciate one more feature, because this is something that was sadly missing from the previous keyboard I reviewed. And that's these adjustable feet. Now, I did talk about how the previous keyboard is permanently angled thanks to this ledge here, but not everybody wants their keyboard at an angle. So, having the option to put it at an angle is much better. And I also just noticed at this very moment that it also has very nicely sized traction pads. Unlike the previous keyboard, which just has a fake plastic traction pad and a tiny bit of foam right there. Next up, let's talk about the LED effects on this keyboard, mainly due to the fact that I also want to talk about the function keys, and they kind of are interrelated. Now, the most important key when it comes to the LED effect would have to be this one right here. This keyboard has a dedicated LED button. Unlike the previous keyboard, which used the scroll lock key, which I'll admit was kind of ingenious due to the fact that nobody ever really uses scroll lock these days, but that did mean the LEDs wouldn't turn on if you were using a non-Windows system. Well, maybe it would have turned on DOS, but I never actually tried that. Now let me turn off my lights really quick so that we can really show what the LEDs are all about. There we go. Now, it's not pitch black in here, but it will work. The main reason I wanted to do this was to show you that this also has another feature when it comes to the LEDs that the previous keyboard didn't have, and that's multiple brightness settings. If you hold down the function key and then use page up and page down, you can change the brightness on the LEDs. There we go. And I should also point out that the LED pattern that you see on this keyboard is not only static, but it's also the same pattern on the previous keyboard. So this shows what can be done with it using just a little bit more effort. Now, as for the other function keys, you basically have your general multimedia keys up here in the function row, as well as things like email, home, and I believe calculator. However, it did have one function key that I was actually kind of surprised by and very pleased by, and that's the lock key on F11. Basically, when you hold down function and hit F11, that locks all of the other key input on your keyboard, which is great because I have 3 cats, and if I walk away, I'm going to be locking my keyboard from now on. They've sent Discord messages one too many times for my liking. And on a similar note, over here on the Windows key, it has what some keyboards have referred to as gaming mode. Basically, if you hold down function and hit Windows, that locks the Windows key and the Windows key only. So if you're over here hitting WASD and any of the other keys that you're going to be using while gaming, you don't accidentally bring up your start menu. Good inclusion. And thinking of what I was doing over here, some of you have probably noticed the gaming WASD keys, which pretty much just means that it has arrows on the WAS and D keys, since they're the movement keys that most games use these days. In the case of the previous keyboard, they instead went for making them a different color. And I think that just about covers it with this keyboard. Now, all in all, I'm gonna have to say that this is a pretty decent buy for $10, and I definitely like it a whole heck of a lot more than the previous keyboard that they offered. Now, I know in my last video I mentioned that this was a $7 keyboard while this one is a $10 keyboard, but in my defense, this one did launch at $10 if I'm not mistaken, and I do know for a fact that you could find it for $10 at some physical stores, while it was being sold for $7 at other physical stores and on the website. Even if you want to call this a $7 keyboard, I'd say this is $3 well spent on the upgrade. Now, I will admit that I am a little bit disappointed that it uses static color LEDs, especially when the color changing LEDs are so cheap. Now, I paid about $3 for a bag of 100 of these, which, if I'm not mistaken, is also around what I paid for a similar amount of static color LEDs. So maybe they should have gone the extra mile. Though, at the same time, maybe this was the right choice if the level gaming speakers from Bass Jacks are anything to go by. I reviewed those a while back, and if you gave the speakers long enough, the LEDs would go out of sync, and that might screw up this pretty design you have here. You know? Maybe I should do an experiment to find out. But anyway, all of this has been a pretty long-winded way to say that this keyboard's not half bad. So if you need a new keyboard for any reason, or you want to start adding LEDs to your setup and you really need to make it fit into a budget, you could definitely do worse. On that note, this is your guy Cly, signing off.